understand that Texas is not Virginia, but I want to know if you think if it was a power play.
Where does this go? Because you want to talk about power plays. I would love to know, Hassan Piker on your side of the aisle said today that as a result of this ruling, if a peaceful revolution is not possible, then violent revolution is inevitable. So do you agree with Hassan Piker?
I'm not Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker can...
But do you agree with that?
Hassan Piker can speak for himself.
What does he mean by that?
I don't know. You can ask him. I'm not Hassan Piker. I'm
But
Brian.
do you agree with that?
Brian Tyler Cohen appeared on CNN to push back against MAGA talking points and far-right misinformation. During the debate, he went head-to-head with Caroline Sunshine, which somehow is apparently her real name. We're gonna look at some clips from that exchange featured on the Alex Michelson show, because there's definitely a lot to say about how this whole conversation played out, so let's get right into it.
And now to the latest on the redistricting battle in the U.S. The Virginia State Supreme Court has struck down the Democrats' redistricting plan that voters approved a few weeks ago. The plan could have helped Democrats win as many as 4 more House seats, but the state's high court ruled that the process of creating the referendum violated the state constitution. State Democrats say they intend to appeal the case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has given states wide latitude when it comes to redistricting. President Trump took to social media to celebrate the decision, calling it a huge win for the Republican Party and America in Virginia. Meantime, Alabama lawmakers have approved a plan to hold new primaries if the court allowed the state to use different congressional districts in this year's elections. Let's bring in Brian Tyler Cohen, host of the No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen podcast, and Caroline Sunshine, former communications aide for President Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Welcome back to both of you. Brian, let's start with you. You have been on this redistricting train for years, telling Democrats that you should redistrict. A lot of times they wouldn't listen to you. Now it seems like they finally are and realizing the risk of this. What's your reaction to what happened in Virginia and what Democrats should do now?
Look, I think that the reaction to what happened in Virginia is that it is the perfect encapsulation of the asymmetry between the two sides, where we have independent redistricting commissions in all of the Democratic weapons. And, even when you go to the voters, even when 3 million people show up to vote in a referendum that based on some small technicality, all of those voters' voices are going to be silenced. At the same time that we have Republicans in Florida, in Texas, in North Carolina, possibly South Carolina, Tennessee, all who've just decided by fiat that they're going to redraw their states' maps. I mean, basically ushering in
legislatures,
but redrawing the state maps without a single person weighing in on this stuff, basically ushering in Jim Crow 2.0 in the South. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where we see no black representation in any of these southern states. And so I think it's a wake-up call to Democrats across the country. If you are a Democrat in New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, this is the time to start fighting back and recognize the urgency of this moment right here. Because Republicans don't believe that Democrats have a right to exist as a party. And so if we don't start fighting back, and if we don't stop unilaterally disarming, we're basically going to good government ourselves into obscurity.
Caroline, what do you think of this? Is it Jim Crow 2.0?
Well, so you're opposed to this because you think that this dilutes people's political power unfairly? Is that why you're opposed to this?
I think that it dilutes the ability of people in certain jurisdictions to be able to vote for their representatives. Nashville has been cracked into multiple districts. Memphis has been cracked in multiple districts. And so there's no way that those people who live in those jurisdictions can vote for their representatives because the Republicans have purposefully gerrymandered those states to dilute their voting power.
So you're against diluting voting power?
I'm against gerrymandering.
Okay, so do you support then illegal immigrants being allowed to vote in elections?
Illegal immigrants don't vote in federal elections.
Well, illegal immigrants are who Democrats want to vote in federal elections.
Illegal immigrants have absolutely nothing to do with the topic of gerrymandering. Caroline Sunshine is trying to connect two completely unrelated issues here, and honestly, the argument just comes across as ridiculous and makes no sense at all.
It doesn't matter if they want. It doesn't matter what anybody wants.
If you are against diluting political power for anybody, you should not want illegal immigrants to vote in American elections because we can't dilute the political power of American citizens.
But this isn't a discussion about that. And illegal immigrants are not allowed to vote in federal elections. What about this move of what the Supreme Court did and what Republicans are doing right now when it comes to redistricting? A lot of this started with President Trump telling Texas to get him more congressional districts.
Well, I think checks and balances played out here. I mean, the Virginia Supreme Court said this can't happen in 2026, but it could happen in 2028. So I'm not sure what the big deal is here. This went through the democratic process, and the Supreme Court, the judge struck it down saying the language in the referendum was flagrantly misleading. And he's not saying it can't happen. He's just saying it can't happen in 2026 because it's unconstitutional. And he's correct, because that is a flagrant power play by Democrats to try to reshape the midterms in 2026.
So if you think
now,
that's
my question
if you
for
think
you
that's a power play,
is what comes next.
Was it a power play when Donald Trump demanded the same thing in Texas? Said that he was entitled to 5 seats in Texas? Was that a power play?
Texas isn't Virginia. The states are sovereign, and according to the Constitution, the 10th Amendment says federalism. Each state has the right to conduct it differently.
I'm asking you if
it played out how it played out in Texas because Texas isn't Virginia.
I understand that Texas is not Virginia, but I want to know if you think it was a power play.
Where does this go? Because you want to talk about power plays. I would love to know. Hassan Piker on your side of the aisle said today that as a result of this ruling, if a peaceful revolution is not...
Once again, Caroline Sunshine starts bringing up something completely unrelated to the actual discussion. They're talking about gerrymandering, and out of nowhere, she suddenly brings up Hassan for no reason.
Possible, then violent revolution is inevitable. So
Okay,
do you agree with Hassan Piker?
I'm not Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker can...
Do you agree with that?
Hassan Piker can speak for himself.
What does he mean by that?
I don't know. You can ask him. I'm not Hassan Piker. I'm
But
Brian.
do you agree with that? Do you condemn that?
Call Hassan Piker
Where
and
do you
ask.
want to see this go?
What I'm here to... I don't care what Hassan Piker says. I'm not Hassan Piker.
I don't think Brian's pushing for a violent revolution
Yeah,
either.
Are you or no? Just to be clear, because like, where does this go now that the Supreme Court in Virginia has ruled
Here's
this
where
is
it goes.
not constitutional?
It goes to me calling on every Democratic elected official, either in the legislature or the governor's office, in Democratic states across the country, and demanding that they redraw maps to fight fire with fire and actually counteract what Republicans have done in a raft of different states across the country and what they continue to do in southern states across the country in response to the Voting Rights Act being gutted.
Do you think that there should be a national ban on gerrymandering to try to stop this whole thing around the country?
I'm not opposed to it, but I also believe that the Constitution says, 10th Amendment, what is not outlined here is left to the states. And I think states have a right to decide their own process. And that's what I'm arguing with you is the process played out here in Virginia. It was put on the ballot on a referendum directly to the voters. It barely passed. The language was extremely misleading. There was an appeal. It then went to the state Supreme Court. What's the problem here? Checks and balances played out.
It didn't go the way Republicans wanted because people actually got the chance to vote on it through a referendum, and the voters made their decision clear. But after losing, Republicans in Virginia took the issue to the Supreme Court, hoping a right-wing court would overturn the result anyway. And this kind of thing has been happening for years now. There have been multiple ballot initiatives where communities voted against things like fracking in their towns, only for state governments to later override those decisions. There's even a state right now where voters approved a measure to send a percentage of tax dollars directly toward helping homeless veterans, yet Republicans are still holding on to that money instead of using it for what voters approved. We're talking about something close to $100 million just sitting there while the people it was meant to help are ignored. At a certain point, people start wondering what the point of voting even is if courts or state governments can simply step in afterward and reverse the outcome whenever they don't like it. That's not how the democratic process is supposed to work. Yet the same people pushing this kind of behavior are also the ones claiming they support freedom and fair elections while backing national bans and more government control whenever it benefits them.
You support a national ban.
100%. And in fact, when the Democrats put that forward, a national ban on gerrymandering in 2021, the Freedom to Vote Act, every single Democrat voted for it. Every single Republican voted against
Do
it.
you think the United States Supreme Court, which has supported Texas's right to do this and has supported California's right to do this, will support Virginia's right to do redistricting? You think they might overturn this?
No, I think that the Supreme Court has proven itself to be an arm of the Republican Party, if nothing else. And we have seen numerous instances where, whether it's this U.S. Supreme Court, where you had a bunch of justices beat their chest about the importance of precedent and the Voting Rights Act, which is, that precedent has been reaffirmed over and over and over again for the past 60 years, just like Roe was precedent that was reaffirmed over and over again. The Supreme Court stands for its own adherence to the Republican Party.
You think the Supreme Court might step in?
I don't think they're going to hear this. I don't see why they would. Again, the people of Virginia spoke. And what's interesting is when this referendum was put on the ballot, let's be very clear, it disenfranchised the rights and the voices, if we're talking about who got disenfranchised with a referendum, of rural Virginians. Yeah. This referendum transferred power from majority of the state, which is rural Virginians, and consolidated it among the swamp, which is people who work in D.C. and live in Virginia. But I didn't hear you speaking up then.
And I, by the way,
I
would concede that when you have a gerrymandered map, certain people are disenfranchised, which is why this whole thing was sparked off after Republicans first went after Texas. I didn't agree with it when it happened in Texas, but what I don't want to see is unilateral disarmament. I think gerrymandering is a scourge all around. But if you really care about disenfranchisement, then you'll care about it when it happens right off the bat. You'll care about it when it happens in Texas. You'll care about it when all of a sudden Memphis is cracked into multiple districts, Nashville is cracked into multiple districts, and those people have no voting power because that's 100% Republican.
And that is true in California now, that Republicans are being disenfranchised by Prop 50.
But the difference
and the districts are not. It's not fair to
Correct.
Republican voters. And the idea of like a 52-0 map here is not fair, just like it's not fair what we're seeing in Tennessee and other places where there's going to be no Democratic representation. That's bad for democracy.
Correct. It's terrible for democracy.
Right.
The difference is there's only one party that actually supports a nationwide ban on gerrymandering, and that's the
But
Democrats.
violent revolution, to be clear, is also bad for democracy.
And
I
neither
agree.
Brian
Violent
nor
revolution.
myself are endorsing violent revolution, just to be clear. Always against
you.
political violence. I've said that repeatedly. Quickly, here in Los Angeles, there's a very interesting race happening right now for mayor. Karen Bass, the incumbent, who has been embattled and does not have very high approval ratings right now, is being challenged by Spencer Pratt, a reality star known for The Hills, who's a Republican, who gets a lot of attention on social media, had a debate this week, got a lot of attention for it. What do you make of what Spencer is doing right now? He's running ads that he's getting a lot of attention for. Certainly a lot of Republicans around the country who don't live in Los Angeles and can't vote for him are endorsing him. What do you think of his chances to actually win in a deeply blue city?
I think Spencer Pratt could be the next mayor of Los Angeles, and I'll tell you why. The last time a reality television star who was politically incorrect ran for office, he ended up all the way at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And Spencer Pratt is reminding me of the saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. He has all the makings. I don't even have to use.
This is honestly a perfect example of how strange and unserious politics has started to become, especially when you see someone like Caroline Sunshine acting like this is somehow a good thing. Donald Trump has created this culture where people now think being famous automatically makes someone qualified to run for office and possibly even win. In a minute, she's going to start using the usual talking point about him being an outsider, but politics feels like the only profession where people proudly say they want someone with no experience at all. Imagine an engineering company interviewing someone for a major job and asking about their background, only for that person to say they know nothing about engineering and their only experience is being a reality TV star. They would get laughed out of the room instantly. But somehow in politics, especially for a job as serious as being the mayor of the second largest city in the United States, people suddenly act like experience doesn't matter anymore. The decisions made in a city like Los Angeles can affect millions of lives, and putting somebody completely unqualified in charge can create real damage. Everyone knows Los Angeles and California have problems, but you would think people would want someone highly skilled and experienced leading a massive city like that instead of another reality TV personality. It really feels like the country has stopped taking important positions seriously.
Use the Donald Trump example. He has the charisma of Mamdani, AOC, Trump. He has that outsider, anti-establishment energy, and he is good at harnessing attention. He is running, tactically speaking, a very nimble, agile, smart campaign. I can tell that campaign is not being governed by committee. My guess is it's a very small team of 5 to 6 people who, just like Trump in 2016, are able to move a lot faster than bloated political consultant type campaigns. And Spencer, people are saying they don't like his politically correct comments. So in the debate the other night, people said he was offensive maybe when he was suggesting that Nithya Raman go ask people who are homeless under the freeway for treatment, they were going to get stabbed in the neck, and people were really offended by that. Well, guess what? In Venice, California today, we had a man get his arm sliced off with a samurai sword. So Spencer Pratt, it looks like, is way more in touch with reality than the rest of the candidates on that stage.
Quickly, Brian, thoughts on Spencer?
What could possibly go wrong with a longtime reality star who speaks bluntly, knows how to game the media, and decides that he wants to be a politician? Look, I think that would
What do you
actually...
have to lose, Brian?
I think that
Look
that would
at this
actually
city.
carry...
What do
I
you
think
have
that would
to
actually
lose?
carry more weight if Donald Trump's approval rating wasn't what it is right now, and if he wasn't, basically exposed as a con artist for promising to be this populist champion, and instead, prices are higher for everybody, healthcare's cut, food assistance has been cut, and we're spending God knows how many billions of dollars per day on a war in the Middle East that he promised would never happen.
Well, in the next few weeks, we will be talking to all the leading candidates for LA mayor, including Spencer Pratt, here on The Story Is. But for now, thanks to Caroline and Brian, we could keep going all night, but at some point we got to stop. Thank you
for having
guys
us.
both for being here.
Brian Tyler Cohen really got straight to the point here when talking about what happens after putting a reality TV star in charge of a country. People already saw how things played out with Donald Trump, where not only was he viewed as unqualified by many critics, but he also surrounded himself with people who had little or no experience in the positions they were given. You had names like RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, who eventually left his role despite many people believing he never should have been there in the first place. The problem with these so-called joke candidates is that once they actually win power, the consequences become very real. If somebody inexperienced ends up running a tiny town with a small population, that's one thing. But when you're talking about a city with millions of people like Los Angeles, or an entire country with more than 330 million citizens, Putting completely unqualified people in charge can turn into a disaster very quickly. And many critics believe that's exactly what has happened in recent years. A lot of people see Donald Trump as one of the worst presidents in modern American history, especially over the last century. And there's a growing feeling that the country eventually needs to return to valuing experience again. Of course, people also don't want politicians staying in office forever. And concerns about leaders being too old are completely valid. But there's still a huge difference between someone who spent 20 or 30 years learning how government actually works and someone walking into office completely clueless about the job. But what do you think about all of this? Do you agree with what Brian Tyler Cohen said during the CNN discussion on the Alex Michelson show, or do you agree more with the MAGA arguments Caroline Sunshine was making? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe before the next video.